Self-help doesn't exist. Just doesn't exist. We need each other to grow. We need each other to advance, to reflect each other to ourselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Drake, and this is Who's Missing. Are you missing an executive coach and former pastor in your life, in your community? I mean, these are just two of the many roles that Kevin Johnson, affectionately known as KJ in my life and in many others, has had in his life. And I hope he gets you thinking about how many roles you've had and how many you have to come. Today is all about empowerment. And KJ is not just a coach, he's the founder of the Transformance Group. He's also one of the facilitators that I get the pleasure of learning alongside and having adventures with as he participates in programming that the Collective Academy is facilitating. And on today's episode, we talk about his journey, twists, turns, the many lives he's led. And we talk about satisfaction. I really want to just pause there. Satisfaction, not success, but the power of perspective as it relates to how we measure our lives and what it takes to be resilient. All good things. I hope this is a primer for whatever you have coming up today, tomorrow, what happened earlier, to put your perspective on a different plane and to see things differently. So enjoy. So how do you establish as a coach the trust to be like, we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing to walk through that with you. How do you establish that rapport? What do you find works?
I think the technical term is love. But I like to use that term because I think that's what allows people to reveal themselves to us. Mm-hmm. And in a coaching relationship, my job is to do just that, to make this space so comfortable for you to be maybe not literally, but figuratively naked and see yourself in the presence of another person and be okay with that. If you feel shame, it's okay to feel shame, but you're doing it in the presence of someone safe that you can recognize that shame for what it is. Mm-hmm.
How much of that work do you think is in relationship versus here's what I find. I think the mythology around like, I'm going to get a journal and I'm going to start writing and I'm going to read all these books I've got and I'm going to figure it out, which is, by the way, wouldn't that be great? If it's just like this self-constructed like ability to change ourselves, like, not that that's not important, but how would you break down the part that happens in relationship versus the part that happens in isolation or in solitude?
I'm really of the mind that nothing happens in isolation. Mm-hmm. Even when I pick up Napoleon Hill's book, Napoleon Hill is with me in that moment of reflection. And so I've always, I felt like it's the only term that we have, but we use it so cavalier that self-help doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. We need each other to grow. We need each other to advance, to reflect each other to ourselves. Or else, in isolation, we convince ourselves of ourselves, and that's not growth. It's how we manage to reinforce our mask.
I think that I've been talking a lot with clients this week about the definition of success and failure. So when you're talking about like growth can't happen, on your own by yourself, that in relationship is sort of where the catalyst for change happens. Because I think you told me this when we were in New York. You said to me, you can't see behind your own eyes. I don't know. I hope you did. Maybe you didn't. But I'm attributing it to you, and I've said it to a lot of other people. So take it. I'm sure you did. So I wonder, I have two questions along those lines. Like, I guess, how are you defining success and failure at this stage in your life as a business owner and as a partner and as a father? And then what do you make of it on, is there failure? Like sometimes I even want to ask that question. What is failure actually? Right?
I very rarely use the term success.
Aha.
I really don't have a deep embrace of the idea of success. I'm probably more interested in satisfaction, which I think gives me a whole lot more play with my experiences. If I've worked really hard on something and it doesn't turn out the way that I intended, I can still be satisfied with my effort and my creativity and the resolve and the dedication I put into that effort, and learn from that and say, well, it didn't turn out the way that I thought it would, but man, I feel good about what I put into that. Man, I feel good about our collaboration. And I think that perspective gives me a richer experience than to measure myself based off of a win-lose metric, which, how many binaries turn out well for us? You got 50-50 chance at being successful or not. That's
Right.
terrible. But if it's based off of my satisfaction, then I am really governing that.
Right. I mean, I hope, people listening are feeling the same thing. Every time I talk to you, I feel empowered. It's like, oh, shit, like I have faculty. What do you say to the people who would say something to the effect of like, that sounds selfish, or I don't feel entitled to that? What do you say to satisfaction feeling frivolous or unattainable even?
They're entitled to feel that way. But again, we need others to see ourselves accurately. And if you want to hold life in that perspective, also allow someone else to show you a different perspective. Now, you may choose to still hold that perspective, but you can't really say you chose it until you've seen other comparative perspectives and other outcomes and then evaluated them for yourself. Many of us are on autopilot from our childhood to adulthood because that's the environment we grew up in. That's the conditioning that we were given. It's the lessons that we were taught, the principles that we were handed down by generation after generation of our elders and grandparents and so on and so forth. And we've never questioned the value set, the religion, the politics, the rhetoric, the abuse, the pain, the rejection that we hand down from generation to generation. We just think that's normal. That's the water, the water we swim in. And so to that cynical or slightly cynical person who thinks that, to choose not to play in that game of hyper commerce is selfish, have you tried being selfish? Try it on for a weekend. Experience all the feels around that selfishness, the guilt that you might experience. Are you guilty? Are you feeling guilty because you ought to be doing something else? Could, ought, should. Those are signs of trauma, signs of conditioning, signs that we've been taught that there is a perfect way to do this. And if you're not doing it, you're wrong or you're a bad child. And I think those reference points are where the cynic is drawing from.
I'm reading this book called Pleasure Activism. Do you think satisfaction is a privilege, or do you think it's a right? Like we have a right to be satisfied?
Ooh. I don't think satisfaction is a privilege, because I feel like if you're experiencing ease, that ease is the privilege. Satisfaction requires something of us. It requires a commitment. It requires a choice. It requires options for dissatisfaction. It's not the same thing to say that I live an easy life, I don't have to work, or I'm a trust fund kid. That's not necessarily going to generate satisfaction. Matter of fact, we know that people who have great wealth have just as many mental health issues and issues of insecurity because they're not earning that, because they're not choosing their purpose in life. They were given it, they inherited it. And so now they have a burden on them to live up to someone else's name or standard or ability to earn wealth that they don't desire. So even though they may have ease, they may not have created the conditions for satisfaction in their life because they aren't choosing for themselves.
I want to This is great. I want to read part of your bio for just a second.
Oh, sure.
Okay. I've been challenged with volatility, uncertainty, complex dynamics, and ambiguity throughout my early life and career. I hustled, cut hair, educated myself, made beds at a Sheraton hotel, cleaned toilets, sold perfume door to door, freelanced as a graphic designer. I'm going to skip a few things if you don't mind. You guys have to check out Kevin on LinkedIn. Filed bankruptcy, slept in my car while filming a documentary, completed 3 marathons. And you end with, I've been there. I've done that. So, I mean, here's the thing. I know that there is just this human propensity to like have a linear life. You know, it's of great comfort. But how do we put on the same playing field that twists and turns are as right as like a linear I mean, there's no right or wrong, right? Mm-hmm. How do you explain it in your own life, and how do you think we share more of the texture of how a life can be lived?
I had so much fun during those years. So what was built during those years, now I run into a problem, a challenge, and there are still problems. Rich people and people who make decent money or make above average money still have big problems to deal with in their life. Mm-hmm. Just because they have money doesn't mean the money solves those problems. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. So what does resilience look like? It looks like, how do I keep taking the next step? And if I don't take that next step, what am I doing while I'm standing still? How am I taking care of myself? How am I preparing for that next step? Because I have no idea what's beyond that next step. I have no idea. Next step for me back then was, hey, can I cut your hair for $5? But also, I think when it comes to growth and understanding what it takes to quote unquote succeed, mm-hmm. It's, what are you learning about yourself in those moments? Because confidence is effectively knowing that you can do something. And you only learn to do something by doing it. You can't imagine doing it and have confidence. It's not mm-hmm. the same thing. You might have belief in yourself by imagining it. We can envision it all day long. But until you actually get out into the arena and you actually do something with what you've been thinking and imagining and envisioning and putting on your vision board and writing and meditating on and mantra chatting and whatever you got to do, you can't build confidence. So the confidence comes by the action, the risk, the possibility of missing the mark, the possibility of not executing it accurately, falling short, and improving. Mm-hmm. And the next time you go out there, you do better. Confidence rises. You want resilience? Get in the game. Try it.
Hearing parts of your story, you just said, like, I had fun, which reminds me, Kevin, of like our job being in part to help people tell their story. Because like you could tell that story a number of different ways, and stories change over time. But I'm just thinking about like helping people sort of narrate their pain in a mm-hmm. way mm-hmm. that allows them to have a reparative experience, but also is fucking inspiring, you know?
Yeah.
That's what we want to hear.
You turn that lead into gold. And there's no better time to do that than in the moment of that.
Yeah.
But you can also do it in hindsight. It's never too late to build a great childhood. You know, it's how you respond. I think it's Viktor Frankl that says, you know, in every circumstances, you have a chance to respond. There's a moment. And in that moment lies all of your possibility, like how you choose in that moment. You have a stimulus, you have a response. Between those two things is your destiny, and you hold it because how you respond is your responsibility.
Yeah. This is why I'm on such a mission of self-love. You know, I agree, self-help isn't a thing. But man, I'm coming into new awareness myself about self-love. I think I've learned the most about love by being in community. Gosh, by hearing other people and sharing my own experience, it's like a couple things have happened for me. And I've heard this reflected back from leaders I'm working with right now. They're like, oh my God, like everybody's going through life, you know? And like, having fun and, experiencing pleasure and being satisfied. I mean, I just think it still feels audacious to me, but I think it's happening more and more that people are prioritizing that piece of us, Yeah, how do you decide what is self-love for you?
Well,
because there's a lot of options, and and I'll tell you this, there's a lot of options, and a lot of them cost a lot of money. So what do we make of that?
Well, I'm of the free 99 persuasion. and I'm listen, last couple of years, I've spent more money on myself than I've ever spent on myself.
You and me both.
And I had to deal with a lot of guilt, like around indulging so much of my income to something that is solely for me.
Yeah.
But do not underestimate the power of a walk in the woods. People tend to have a really difficult time with quiet and with being alone.
Yes.
To me, that is it's like a time-held tradition that when a transition is taking place, solitude is one of the first things that's required of someone in that transitional stage. And so when we avoid those low moments, or when we try to speed our way through those low moments, we're actually causing ourselves harm by not creating the moment of pause so that we can get the gift in it. There's always a gift in our suffering, and no one wants that. No one wants suffering, but we want the gifts.
For sure. Oh yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, would I be who I am today had I not been homeless? Had my mother not died when I was 28? Had I not gotten a divorce? Had I not gone bankrupt? Would I have the skill set? Would I have been nudged and made certain choices along the way if it weren't for those moments in my life? I can't say yay or nay, but I certainly don't want to undo them.
Yeah. I want to, as we round the bend here, one of the things I just took away from what you said is, like, you can't have self-love without stillness. That just feels so at the nucleus of, like, if there were a prescription, like, start with that. Like, just be still, and know that that's hard for all of us, to sit with ourselves. Like, the door closes and you're on your own and you're like picking up your device, right? Like, I can't. So that feels like a really good... that's something I'm going to take away. I know, look, I have access to you, and I'm so grateful for that in a myriad of ways. Is there anything you want to share about what you have going on that people can access more of your wisdom?
Oh boy. Visit me at coachkj.digital. You can subscribe to my email list. I have a book called Groove Back that's about conscious dating and dating after divorce or breakup. And then there is Genius Power Magic, which is, it's not launched yet, but look for it over the next few months. And it will also be accompanied by a book.
Amazing.
Distilling much of what we've talked about here. My learned experiences and lessons from nearly 25 years as a coach.
I can't wait to read it. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Always is.
I love you dearly. I can't wait to get to know you more, over the next whoever knows how long. Well, KJ and I covered a lot of ground on this episode, but one of the things we didn't cover is how committed he is to giving back, especially in the city of Chicago. He is a proud board member of 826 Shy, 826 National. The first chapter opened in San Francisco 20 years ago. And now 826 Shy is all about having Chicago's youth have access to high quality writing and literary arts education. They are committed to programs and services for students and communities most impacted by systemic disinvestment in high quality literacy and arts education. And that's important to us here at Who's Missing. It should be important to you too, because look, writing And processing language gives such an important platform for self-expression. It certainly did for me growing up. I know it has for Kevin in his own life, still does for both of us to this day. So I encourage you to visit 826chi.org. That's 826chi.org, or look for the 826 chapter in your area and help students find their voice and their ever-present right to live and create and share what they create. Wow. Well, that was an experience, as it always is. 3 takeaways from our friend KJ, my friend, now your friend, obviously. How can you resist? 1, oh man, I'm going to be using this one a lot. Leaning into the idea of satisfaction. Satisfaction instead of success. It leaves more room for play and to be process-oriented instead of results-oriented. In other words, right, like it's about the journey, not the destination. So what does it mean to be satisfied? How about also, second takeaway, allowing someone else to show you a different perspective? If you only choose your own perspective, can you really claim that you chose it if you're not being challenged, right? In thinking, challenge isn't bad, conflict isn't bad. And then this third takeaway, oh man, there's a few more, but I'm going to settle on this one. There's always a gift in our suffering. I really wish no one had to suffer. You know, we're all going to experience pain. That's inevitable. But that suffering, you know, a lot of the great spiritual teachers say it's optional. But if you're in it, and you're in it right now, you're not alone. And there's a gift in there somewhere. It's coming. The teaching is coming. Hold on, reach out, and stay with it. And I'm just so grateful for this conversation. I hope you also have some takeaways that you can implement in your life today. Why not? Let's go.